Welcome back everybody. First things first, I can officially tell you that base building in Unturned 4 will be a big part of the gameplay again. And not just a big part, as it is in Unturned right now, it will come back like it did back in the old days of Unturned. You remember the days where Unturned looked more like Lego instead of a survival game? This is the era I mean. But how did I get this information, you might ask? Well, you probably remember the time I posted a video where I did what I do best. I complained about Unturned space strength and how building in Unturned basically felt like you're creating a house of cards. Raiding bases is simply too easy in Unturned, so I wrote an email to our master Nelson himself. Now on one side, it didn't come as a surprise to me that Nelson cares about the opinions of his player base and therefore answered my email pretty quickly, but the fact that he apparently is even a subscriber of my tiny channel kinda surprised me, but nice! So what did Nelson actually write to me? In short, he pointed out that he indeed wants to, just as I suggested, make bases stronger in Unturned 4. The stronger bases have a catch though. The additional strength only activates when all owners of the base are offline. And thinking about that, this is probably an even better idea than the one which I originally proposed. To recall, my idea was making bases 3 to 5 times stronger. This would surely make raiding harder, but it would not fix the problem of offline raiding. See? I feel like nothing is more frustrating than logging back into your server and realizing that your entire base got raided while you weren't even there to defend it. Having some sort of offline raid protection means that raiding will still be quite easy, but it will force people to do online raids. And this, ladies and gents, is awesome. Forcing people to only raid others when they are online means that they have the means to defend themselves. It won't just come down to who spent the most time farming explosives, but to who is the better player when raiding bases in Unturned 4. But as good as this all sounds, how exactly does Nelson plan to implement this? Well, according to the email he wrote to me, we know that a timer of 5 minutes will start after the last person of a group has logged out. After the timer reaches 0, the base will get a health buff for 24 hours and therefore discourage any offline raiding attempts. Now this is obviously just a concept and therefore I can, once again, do what I do best, complain. But seriously, let's get the obvious thing out of the way first. This is awesome. In my opinion, online raiding is what makes survival games so interesting, and having a feature in the game which actively promotes and rewards people who do online raids is great. But yeah, I still think there's a little room for improvement. See, having a 24-hour counter start when the last player of a group logs out is obviously a good thing and prevents people from abusing the system by building a base with a secondary account and then simply logging off to protect their base. The problem I see though is that Unturned is already hard for solo players, and having a solo player log in every day in order to not lose his progress is a bit harsh. If you have a group of 10 people, logging in daily with one person or more surely isn't a big deal. So in the end, this is just a huge advantage for people who play in groups. Now I know, you could argue that this brings people together and will force them to roleplay and so on, but no. No, it simply doesn't. You can't force people who want to PvP into roleplaying, but let's not talk about that. So how would I go about this? Personally, I would just like Nelson go with 24 hours as a base value for the timer. If you have a group size of 6 or more people, this is the time you have to log back into the server before the protection decays and your base can get raided. For every player you have less in your group, you will gain an additional 24 hours worth of protection. So this would effectively mean that as a solo player, you have to log in at least once a week in order to not lose your protection. And let's face it, not everybody is such a die-hard Unturned fan. Some people might just want to join a server, enjoy an evening of playtime and then come back to the game in 2 or 3 days. After all, this would bring the game into a state where everybody, no matter whether they are in a group or not, must play regularly, but nobody is forced to play daily. But in the end, even if we won't get such a dynamic counter, I think this feature looks very promising and might even be the one thing that prevents Unturned 4 from becoming the PvP mess Unturned currently is. Thanks for watching, and until next time.